Hello and welcome to the perfect tense in German, das Perfekt, in which we talk about die Vergangenheit, the past. And um, to be successful in translating past tense sentences in German, you need to have an appreciation of what the sentences might look like in English. The way the past works in German and in English is completely different. For example, if we have a look at these very different sentences in English, you'll see what I mean. The perfect tense, sometimes called the past tense, is the tense, or one of the tenses that you use to describe the past, any action that happened previously and is no longer happening. So I worked in a supermarket is possibly the most easy example, the easiest example to recognize because of the ED in English. Anything with an ED on it is very often a past tense. I bought a car yesterday is an irregular verb in English which shows that it doesn't have to end in ED. But that is still the same form of the verb in English, one word. However, there are examples where more than one word are used. For example, she was speaking to her friend. The temptation is to try and translate she was and then find a form of speak. If you do that, you get into a big mess, and you must learn that was or were with an ing form in English is exactly the same in German as numbers 1 and 2. It is the perfect tense. And this is where you may get confused if you have been learning Romance languages like French and Spanish, because they distinguish between the perfect tense and the imperfect tense, and their uses of those tenses are nothing to do with the German. German is much more straightforward because all three of those examples are the same tense in German. Indeed, all four of those examples, because in English we can often use used to express the past as well. They used to go to Austria every year is another example that would use a different tense in French and Spanish, but in German it is this perfect tense. And the imperfect tense is a name of a tense that gets thrown around in German to describe the simple past tense. Is a completely different tense and can equally be used for all four of those examples. So there are two options in German, and the difference is quite small and very often depends on where you come from in Germany, or which German-speaking country you come from. But essentially, you can use the perfect tense for all four of those examples in any context and it will work fine. So as long as you remember that, if you're in the past, you can use the perfect tense, and don't try splitting up these English words, then you'll be alright. If you see was and an ing or a used to, just look for the perfect tense of go, the perfect tense of speak, or whatever the main verb is you're using. Hope that's clear. Right, so once we know we need the perfect tense, the trickier bit is forming it. First of all, you need to find the infinitive, as in any formation of any tense, from the dictionary or possibly Learning Mat, and it will end in an en or an n in German. And when you've done that, you need to check your dictionary or strong verb list. Check the strong verb list in the middle of the dictionary, or the printed strong verb list, and see whether your verb appears on it. If it does, then it's a strong verb, and if it's not, it's a weak verb. And depending on whether it's on the list or not, will decide what you do with it. For example, if it is on the list, you just take the past participle straight off off the list. And if it's not on the list, then you will take the en off the infinitive, and you will add a ge to the beginning and a t to the end. And then you will have your past participle. And that is the first stage. Once you've done that, you need to add what's known as the auxiliary verb. And if it's a weak verb and not on the list, then you are looking for the correct part of the verb haben. And if it is on the list, you have a choice, well, not so much a choice, but you need to find the correct part of the verb haben or sein. Now, it's getting a little bit complicated, so we need to look at some examples. So, number 6. The past participle, so the bit we've got at stage 4, must always be at the end of the clause. Okay. So let's have a look at an example. Spielen. Spielen. If we look at our strong verb list, we will not find spielen on there. So if we want to make some form of the past tense of play, such as I played, or he was playing, or she used to play, then we take our infinitive and we knock off the en and we add the ge and the t. And that gespielt is our past participle. Okay, and to that, because spielen is a weak verb, it's not on the strong verb list, we add part of the verb haben. And haben can be found on the learning. Here we have our higher tier learning mat, and just underneath the grid of verbs here, we've got our conjugation of haben in the present tense, which is a strong verb itself, so changes slightly with hast and hat in the middle of it. Best thing is to learn that verb, but it's on there if you haven't yet. So there's our verb haben, and we add the past participle to that, making it go to the end of the clause. That's the most important thing. So the past participle gespielt is exactly the same. It doesn't matter who is doing the verb. It's the part of haben that changes according to whether it's I, you, he, she, etc. And then if there's anything else in our sentence, that goes in the middle. Okay? And then you've got a simple phrase. I played football, ich habe Fußball gespielt, you played football, du hast Fußball gespielt, etc., etc. That's it for the weak verbs. If we have a look at a strong verb, sprechen, if we go to our strong verb list, there's our strong verb list, and if we take it down alphabetically, sprechen, we'll see, is there. Sprechen, spricht, sprach, gesprochen, and it's this fourth column, the past participle, that we take. Okay. So, sprechen, spricht, sprach, gesprochen, if we can learn that, all the better. If not, look it up. Take gesprochen. And then again, you've got your parts of haben, depending on who it is who spoke. Add your past participle at the end, doesn't change, always the same, gesprochen, and then put anything else in the middle of your sentence. So we've got mit Freunden. So, ich habe mit Freunden gesprochen, I spoke with friends. Of course, it could also mean I have spoken with friends. And indeed, that's what it looks like, because in English we use have as an auxiliary verb as well. It could mean I was speaking with friends, or I used to speak with friends. Context would tell us the best way to translate that. 4 or more in English, 1 in German. And there we go. Now, I mentioned earlier that some of these verbs take sein, not haben, and that's easiest to spot if you've got a good strong verb list. For example, there's our strong verb list, and it tells us at the top that star means it takes sein. So any of these with a star on the past participle, we know we've got to use sein when forming the perfect tense. Easiest way is if you look at a lot of these verbs, to stay, to travel, to fall, to go, not really to succeed, that's a bit more difficult to see, to come, to run, to ride. Hopefully you can see that a lot of them are verbs of motion, about going somewhere or even not going anywhere, or changing state, i.e. going from one state to another, such as sterben, to die. Okay, also goes with conjugates with sein, and that's one way to look at it. Another way is to see that they are verbs that do not take a direct object. So you can't go something, you have to go to something. Okay, it is a little bit more complex than that, but if you think of the motion thing, you'll spot most of them. For example, fahren, to go, when you're using mechanized transport, takes sein. It's got a star next to it. Some lists will put an ist with it instead of a star to show that it's takes sein. That is all you do differently. You don't use I have, you use I am, you are, etc. And past participle remains the same, and it goes on the end as well. So, ich bin nach Deutschland gefahren, I went to Germany. Du bist nach Deutschland gefahren, you went to Germany, etc., etc. And that's the only difference, is that instead of saying I have here, you're saying I am, you are. Literally, I am to Germany gone. That's literally what you're doing. And that is mainly it. So it's a question of, is it a strong verb? Do you take the past participle off the strong verb list, or do you add a GE and a T? Do you use haben or sein, i.e. is the movement from one state to another? And then remember to put your past participle at the end of the sentence. And just quickly, there are a few exceptions to what I've said so far, and the most common are long infinitives that aren't on the strong verb list. So, ich habe mit meiner Mutter telefoniert. Telefonieren isn't on the strong verb list, but because it's a long infinitive, there's no GE at the beginning. Here's some more examples. Ich habe meine Tante besucht. And it's very often verbs that are 3 syllables long or more. So besuchen, telefonieren. Ich habe Deutsch studiert. I studied German. Again, no GE. Ich habe den Satz übersetzt. I translated the sentence. Again, no GE. The infinitive, übersetzen, 4 syllables long. It's a long infinitive. Arbeiten would be one exception to that. Arbeiten is 3 syllables, but you do say ich habe gearbeitet. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but it's something to watch. And the other thing are modal verbs. So modal verbs use the infinitive as their past participle. There's no GE, there's no T on the end. Some strong verb lists will just put the modal verbs on, so you don't need to worry about it, but it's worth mentioning. Ich habe die Hausaufgaben machen müssen. I had to do the homework. So it's also worth noting that the müssen goes at the end. You've already got the machen at the end of your sentence because it's the infinitive, but then the müssen goes right to the end because there's your past tense and the past participle has to be at the end. Hope that's clear. Thank you very much for listening.